Aleksei Oleinik versus Fabricio Werdum will be taking place on the prelims of UFC 249. And again, I have to remind you, that's how stacked UFC 249 is. On any other pay-per-view, Oleinik versus Werdum could very well be on the main card, proven by this original event on May the 9th was supposed to be UFC 250, and Oleinik versus Werdum was on the main card of the pay-per-view. That's how stacked this card is. What a co-main event of the prelims, by the way. Oleinik on one side, dangerous perennial contender. He's always around, if you don't understand what that word means. Aleksei Oleinik coming off a big win against Maurice Green to sort of turn back the clock. It seemed as though he was going in one direction of his career. He lost to Walter Harris by KO. He lost to Alistair Overeem by KO. However, the Alistair Overeem fight was a pretty close one. He had Overeem in trouble at one point, if you remember. And there were a lot of moments in that fight where Oleinik was ripping against Overeem against a cage. All of these people begin with O, and it really fucking annoys me. Oleinik was ripping big shots against Overeem against a cage and actually clipped him at one point and had Overeem rocked. Do not just look at that fight by the tail of the tape. I know it says he got KO'd, and that's normally a bad sign, but Oleinik held his own in that fucking fight and did a very good job. However, on the other side of things, we've got Fabricio Werdum, a very dangerous contender, the former heavyweight champion, of course, in the argument for the greatest heavyweight of all time, maybe before this whole USADA thing, and maybe before some of his recent losses as well. Fabricio Werdum was in the argument for greatest heavyweight of all time. He beat Fedor Emelianenko, who's another argument for greatest heavyweight of all time. I know it was past his prime, however, he also beat Cain Velasquez, who was also in consideration for the best heavyweight of all time. He did lose to Stipe Miocic, but do not be mistaken, this is still Fabricio Werdum. But it's Fabricio Werdum coming off a long layoff. Yeah, 2 years at heavyweight is a long, long time. And usually when I'm predicting a fight that includes Aleksei Oleinik, all I'm talking about with Aleksei Oleinik is how old he is, how much damage he's taken in his career. But when I look at these two records, both of them are 42 years of age. So I can't really bring up the age of Aleksei Oleinik because he's also got the activity to kind of make up for his age at this point, because Fabricio Werdum is 42 years of age, but Fabricio Werdum has not been as active as Aleksei Oleinik. Aleksei Oleinik's fought near enough 5 times. Yes, Aleksei Oleinik has fought 5 times since Fabricio Werdum was in the octagon. And by the way, the last time Fabricio Werdum was in the octagon, he was getting KO'd by Alexander Volkov. Alexander Volkov just went to a decision with Greg Hardy. Little bit of clarity here in the division when you look into things. I don't think Fabricio Werdum's going to win this fight. I think he has every chance to. It's Fabricio Werdum, of course. I'm not saying that Fabricio Werdum cannot win this fight. What I'm saying is, this is 50-50, and Aleksei Oleinik is a juicy fucking underdog. And I don't remember what kind of underdog he is, but I think he's a plus 200, around that area. That's a juicy underdog, and one that I'm not willing to pass up. I'm not a betting man, but in terms of an underdog pick, for my reputation and my predictions, Aleksei Oleinik is a guy that I'm looking at here, because this is a 50-50 fight, but they just seem to remember Werdum as the champion, even though times change in the heavyweight division very quickly, and who knows if Fabricio Werdum is ever going to be the same fighter coming back. Not to mention, if there was one time I would not like to have my big comeback, it would be during a fucking pandemic. Fabricio Werdum has not fought in 2 years. He will be coming back to an empty arena which he has not fought in ever before in his life. I need you to take that into consideration, because Fabricio Werdum, this isn't just a comeback. He's coming back to a completely different environment. He's not coming back to something that he's going to find vaguely familiar, that he'll finally get used to as he's walking towards the cage. Oh yes, I remember this feeling. He's coming back to an empty arena. I need you guys to understand that. It's a completely different environment, and an environment that's going to be playing on Fabricio Werdum's head right now as he comes back after 2 years off. That is a big aspect of this fight, and Aleksei Oleinik, if nothing else, you can call him comfortable, because he's fought 5 times in the past 2 years, and for a heavyweight that's been KO'd out of those past 5 fights, 2 of those past 5 fights, that's something to say. He's been active and he's staying in there, and he's just coming off a big win against Maurice Green with a very dominant submission victory. I mean, Maurice Green is a big, tall, rangy striker, had some good wins in the division. Aleksei Oleinik shut all of that shit down. And another thing I want to talk about here, Fabricio Werdum, you may ask, is going to have the advantage on the jiu-jitsu department. Okay, I understand that, but I also am willing to offer you guys that there is a level of jiu-jitsu that is required to just be able to get out of submissions. It's very difficult to submit someone in MMA. There is a gap of jiu-jitsu that guys can acquire by being so much better than everyone else, where they can take guys down and immediately submit them. But there's a level of jiu-jitsu for the guys that aren't quite those prodigies in the grappling department that they can acquire that's going to keep them out of those submission positions, where they're just aware of the dangers. You don't have to be a Damian Maia. You don't have to be a fucking... Who's another legendary jiu-jitsu guy? Can't think of any off the top of my fucking head right now, but Damian Maia is the one that originally came to mind. You don't have to be a Damian Maia to understand when you're in danger in a grappling situation, and we're seeing that more and more by the fights with Gilbert Burns and Damian Maia, Jorge Masvidal, Damian Maia. There are people that have gone to the ground. Maia had Masvidal's back. Masvidal's not the grappler that Maia is. But Masvidal was aware enough and calm enough in the situation and had enough of an understanding of jiu-jitsu to know, I'm in danger, and here's what I have to do to get out of this situation. I keep burping through my fucking sentences. It's very annoying. Either way. Masvidal had an awareness of jiu-jitsu, able enough to get him out of danger. I think Oleinik's going to have that level of jiu-jitsu as well. And when you look at Oleinik's career, I mean... 58-13. Jesus Christ, he's had 7 KO losses. But then again, Fabricio Werdum's had a handful of KO losses as well. So I don't know if you can even take that into consideration. I think that a guy with the reach advantage as well on the feet, which is something we also have to mention, if you think that Fabricio Werdum isn't going to be able to submit Oleinik, which I don't think is going to be able to happen, I think this may be taking place on the feet. If you ask me, Oleinik's got great takedown defense. Werdum, I don't think he's going to be getting taken down by Oleinik, and if he does, I don't think he's going to get submitted by Oleinik. I don't see that happening whatsoever. However, I think this fight's going to take place on the feet, and I'm looking at a massive reach advantage for Aleksei Oleinik of about 3 or 4 inches, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're the shorter opponent, I've said this before with Volkanovski and Holloway, when you're the shorter, stockier opponent, that reach advantage over the taller, rangier guy who's supposed to be rangier than you is a big advantage to have, okay? Because the guy who's taller cannot work his way inside. So if you're shorter than him with a longer reach, you're a problem, inherently. There's not much Fabricio can do about that other than the big knee up the middle. That's something I really want to talk about here. And I'm saying a lot about Fabricio Werdum that he can do very well in this fight here. The knee up the middle from Fabricio Werdum, which he was using against Cain Velasquez, who's a similar build to Aleksei Oleinik in terms of height and range. The knee up the middle for Fabricio Werdum, the one he used against Overeem as well. The one Overeem was using against Aleksei Oleinik massively. Aleksei Oleinik in the clinch hunches over very heavily. Overeem saw that in the Oleinik fight. He knew if I go a knee up the middle, this guy's going to fucking crouch over straight into it. Fabricio Werdum has definitely seen that as well. And Fabricio Werdum is definitely going to be using that technique in the fight. The knee up the middle is guaranteed money for Fabricio Werdum. However, I just don't think he's going to do it. I don't think after 2 years off, coming back during a pandemic, coming back to an empty fucking arena where there's no one in the fucking stands whatsoever, complete dead silence, I don't think it's going to work out for Fabricio Werdum. Aleksei Oleinik has fought 5 fucking times in the past 2 years. Werdum's fought none of those times. Werdum went from a USADA suspension, which, by the way, was never deemed innocent for. I don't think he was ever deemed innocent for his USADA suspension. A 2-year suspension is a bad suspension. Remember, you can get a suspension for a couple of months nowadays. Okay? That's an innocent suspension. 2 years ain't so fucking innocent for Fabricio Werdum. I have no idea what version of him is going to come back, but what I do know is the last version of Fabricio Werdum we saw got KO'd by Alexander Volkov. And Alexander Volkov just went to a close decision with Greg Hardy. I'm just saying the facts here. I don't think he's going to come back to the same heavyweight division that he remembers so fondly. I think the division has completely changed since he has been gone. Very notable to the fact that he hasn't fought one of Ngannou or Rosenstruik, and those are 2 of the biggest names in the division right now, surging towards the title. He also hasn't fought Derek Lewis, who's a big name in the division. There's a lot of guys that have slid up there that he has never faced before, and I think that Oleinik's going to catch him straight on the chin and put him out cold because, you know, recently Fabricio's been getting put out cold. I know I can't help but notice that. I know he got KO'd by Stipe Miocic, he got KO'd by Alexander Volkov. I'm not saying that Aleksei Oleinik has the level of striking that Stipe Miocic and Alexander Volkov do. What I am saying is Aleksei Oleinik does hit hard. Fabricio Werdum is coming off a long fucking layoff, and Aleksei Oleinik should not be that big of an underdog. I'm picking him because of that reason. Fabricio Werdum should probably be the favourite here. This is a very unique prediction from me because I'm kind of giving a lot of things that Fabricio Werdum can do well. I'm telling you guys, Oleinik should not be a plus 200 underdog. He shouldn't be, whatsoever. That is the stupidest odds I've ever seen in my life. This is a 50-50 fight. So if you want to make some money, put it on Oleinik and include him in your parlays if you're looking to have a bit of fun. That's where your money is to be made. Underdogs that shouldn't be underdogs are the best predictions to make. Aleksei Oleinik is one of those guys in this very unique situation. I just don't think the environment that Fabricio Werdum is coming back to after 2 years is going to be familiar enough for him to get a big win against a top contender in Aleksei Oleinik that's now coming off a big win. And by the way, if you'd made this fight after Aleksei Oleinik got KO'd by Walt Harris, I'd probably have a different answer for you guys. But seeing as he's bounced back and his chin has gotten somewhat of a rest, I think Oleinik's going to be tough enough to get Fabricio Werdum out of there by KO in the first round. Not something you hear from me often. He's got a lot of submissions, does Aleksei Oleinik. I think he's going to crack Werdum on the chin, put him out of there in the first round, and spoil the coming back party for Fabricio Werdum. And I'm sorry if you disagree with me, but that's just too good of an underdog to pass up on. Oleinik's going to get the job done. He's a tough old Russian. And for once, I can't bring up his age because Fabricio Werdum is the exact same fucking age. And he's been through enough fucking wars as well to go through with that as well. He's taken a lot of damage in his career. Not equal damage to Aleksei Oleinik. But come on. I'm just picking Oleinik here. It seems like a no-brainer to me. Werdum's very good, but Jesus Christ, when you really look into things, Oleinik's going to take this one, I believe. I think he's going to win it by first round KO. Thank you for watching. I'd love Fabricio Werdum to win. I actually want Fabricio Werdum to win because, as I said before, he's got a lot of guys in the heavyweight division right now that he doesn't have a win over. And I think the winner of this fight could maybe take on Derek Lewis next, who seems to be a bit of an outsider. You know, we've got Ngannou versus Rosenstruik. We've got Curtis Blades versus Volkov being signed. JDS is going to be taking on someone soon. And I doubt that's going to be Derek Lewis because they only fought each other not too long ago. You've got Overeem versus Walt Harris. Werdum versus Oleinik. Derek Lewis is left out. So left out, he's taking on light heavyweights in Ilir Latifi that aren't even ranked at heavyweight. The winner of this fight should take on Derek Lewis. I think if it's Fabricio Werdum, that's an amazing fight between him and Derek Lewis, and a fight that he could probably win. And I hope that Fabricio Werdum wins this fight. I just don't like those odds. I think it's 50-50, and Oleinik should not be a juicy underdog, but he is. So Oleinik's going to win and KO Werdum in the first round. I promise you. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Click that button there. Goodbye. Watch for the knees up the middle from Fabricio Werdum. But also watch for the big looping shots with the big unexpected reach of Oleinik as the shorter opponent to catch Fabricio Werdum on the chin and send him into fucking La La Land in the first round. Goodbye.